Welcome back to the Crimson Chronicles podcast, where we bring you the stories behind Alabama football history. Today we're joined by Coach Danny Ford, who played for Bear Bryant, then served as a graduate assistant and assistant coach at Alabama, before going on to win a national championship at Clemson, and later facing the Tide as Arkansas's head coach. We'll talk about lessons he learned from Coach Bryant, the '81 title run, and his toughest battles with Alabama. If you love hearing these stories straight from the legends themselves, make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and share it with a fellow Bama fan. That's how you help us keep telling the history of the Crimson Tide. Now, let's get started. Friends, make sure you've got your title towel ready for game day. Head over to whitwillsports.com and use the code TWO for a special discount. That's TWO. Get the rally towel of the Crimson Tide today.
Big updates came to Yay, Alabama on September 30th. Membership is now streamlined into 2 tiers, rookie at $5 a month and veteran at $25. Veterans now enjoy exclusive player shoutouts and experiences, along with all the breaking news and insider content. Fans also got Yay coins and a brand new digital message board, making it easier than ever to connect and support the Tide. Check out the new Yay Alabama experience today at yay-alabama.com/join.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Crimson Chronicles podcast, dedicated to Alabama Crimson Tide sports. I'm Rick Morton, I'm here with my co-host Tommy Ford. Today we're joined by Coach Danny Ford, an all-SEC lineman for Alabama, a graduate assistant and assistant coach under Coach Bryant, and the national championship coach at Clemson.
Well, thank you, Rick. It is great to have Danny with us. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the Crimson Chronicles podcast on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. That way you'll never miss an episode celebrating the Tide's greatest moments. It is our honor to have Coach Danny Ford with us tonight. Danny's a native of my hometown of Gadsden, or should I say I'm a native of his hometown.
I was born first.
I believe he signed with Alabama in 1966 as a 6'3", 190-pound end. Danny played on the freshman squad in 1966, then lettered as an end in 67 and 68, and moved to offensive tackle in 69, where he made first team All-SEC, along with his teammate Alvin Samples. We honored Alvin and Danny in 2017 as the honorary captains. He made his famous debut in the 1978 Gator Bowl, which is a game in which Ohio State's Woody Hayes punched a Clemson player and was fired the next day. Danny coached at Clemson for 11 seasons, winning 5 ACC championships and 1 national championship in 1981. Overall, he had a 96, 29, and 4 record with the Tigers, including a 6-2 bowl record. After a couple of years out of coaching, he became head coach at Arkansas for 5 seasons. After his Arkansas days, he retired to the farm in South Carolina and is still there today a few times when I was growing up, and he was a great golfer. As you know, I knew your brother Joe Ford, who wore many hats in the Gadsden area for the community and civic leadership, served more than 20 years in the Alabama State Legislature. I stay in touch with Joe's son, Craig, who's the mayor of Gadsden. And then there's your sister, Pat, whose son-in-law is Danny Pierman, one of your former players at Clemson and an assistant coach at Alabama, and is now Dabo's staff at Clemson. Danny and his wife, Christy, are 2 of the Alabama Clemson ties over the past few decades, and that's why we call them the Clemson Tide. Danny, it's great to have you on our Crimson Chronicles podcast.
Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate you and Rick. Been a long time since I heard anybody from Tuscaloosa, and they're glad to find out what's going on down there. Third season starts on Monday.
All right, let me ask you a few questions.
Okay.
You finished Gadsden High in 1966, and the year before, 4 Gadsden High players signed with Alabama. Wayne Stevens, Steve Clay, John David Bedingfield, and Wayne Owen.
Yeah.
But tell us about the recruiting process with Coach Bryant and his staff. And did the fact that those four guys a year ahead of you signed with Alabama have anything to do with you going to Alabama?
Everybody remembers Coach Hennessy, who was my primary recruiter back then. And the four guys that went to Alabama the year before helped because I would know someone there, not Phil Halstead, 2 hours away from Gaston. They had just finished Interstate 59 at that time. So it made it easy to get to Tuscaloosa. Those four guys were influential on us. Another guy, John Boston, was my basketball tight end and defensive end coach in high school. Great football coach and even better basketball coach. It was fun getting recruited. Williamson was very influential. He came by the school several times. My senior year, we had Tommy White, an SEC official at Gordo, and came to Gaston and did a great job. Gerald Stevens was on that team, an Alabama guy. Clark Bowler was one of the coaches. And Coach Boston. We had Alabama all around us. And I don't know if Gaston was a Alabama town or not, but, we had one guy that went to Etowah where my wife went to school, named Bobby Payne, who was a really fine running back that went to Auburn. M.L. Bracken was a great player at Auburn. He worked a good year with my brother for a while. I liked Tennessee a lot. Doug Dickey was there then. They did a nice job recruiting. I liked Tennessee. They were winning. Charlie Coffey was the guy recruiting me. I enjoyed Tennessee, Auburn. Coach Sanderson, I was telling somebody about Coach Bryant. Coach Bryant gave the freshman coaches 3 basketball scholarships. So they didn't have enough to play. We always had football players playing basketball. They would fill in with the freshman football player. Mike Dade was there. David White was a walk-on from Tuscaloosa. Turned out to be a basketball player. It was kind of funny. Coach Bryant was a master at getting the most out of a rule. And I don't know if it was him, Coach Greskla, Coach Bailey, Coach Hennessy, or all the coaches in a meeting, but every time there was a rule passed with the NCAA, they would figure out a way to bend it or go around it. The next year, the NCAA would have to change the rule. I remember Danny Ridgway hurt his knee, and Danny's passed away, I understand now. And he was a quarterback, and tore his knee up. Coach Bryant was trying to be good to the guy. He couldn't play anymore. He had a bad knee, so he sent him in to tell the quarterback what to run, and then he'd run back off the field. He got more exercise than anybody on the team, running back and forth into the offense. Yeah. Well, the next year, they disallowed that. They said you got to stay in for at least one play. I can think of anything Coach Bryant and his staff did to cause the NCAA to change. The coaches recommend to the NCAA study it and try to put it in or take it out.
Tommy White was the football coach when I was at Gadsden High several years later, and he was my golf coach also. So he came back for a reunion of Coach Bryant's first team at 58. He was eating in the press box a Friday night before a game. I said, Coach, I'm hooking the ball really bad. How do I get rid of this hook? He looked at me like, you think I know how to get rid of a hook? All he did was schedule the matches and get a supplement.
That's like Clemson. Coach Howard, Coach Neely brought him to Clemson from Alabama, and they wanted him to be a coach. He said, you got to coach track. He said, you know anything about track? He said, no, but I know where the library is. I get a book of track. And he did.
Well, Coach, you mentioned the 1966 team. You were a freshman in 66. That year, the varsity was the missing ring team, nation's only undefeated, untied squad. They were robbed of a national championship. I'll just say it. And
right.
Although freshmen couldn't play, I imagine you practiced against those upperclassmen a lot. What was it like practicing against that bunch?
Well, we always were the scout team or whatever, and in individual periods, we always went against on the offensive line, and it was Calvert and Jerry Dockin and Earl Cecil Dowdy, really good players, and it was just a deal that you sure didn't want to make them look bad if you were capable. So I don't know any freshmen were capable. I remember many times, and I won't call his name, and say, fall down on this play. And I said, yes, sir. They made him look good in practice. And they would tell us how to do things. We sort of took their advice, and they were hardworking group, though. I can tell you what I really think of from the history of not being able to play as a freshman, and then the next year, there was a great majority of those guys that played on the 66 team went in as a student coach. Back then, you didn't graduate in 3 years. Everybody graduates in 3 years. Their senior year in high school, and they don't let them go home and do everything else. So they all get out in 3 years. But those guys stayed, some of their masters. Right before the Vietnam War was getting cracked up, too. And so a lot of them probably wanted to stay and get their degree to stay under the service, too. So, but we lost. We had that year, coming that next year, the freshman team, first year, Coach Bryant went out and recruited all over the country. And I think Coach Devaney probably had a lot to do with that, talking to him, bowl practice and bowl game and everything else. I remember he got the best lineman out of Georgia. He got the best lineman, of course, out of Alabama. He got the best one out of Mississippi. He got the best one out of Idaho or Montana, somewhere out there. And those guys were so rough on those kids, about 4 of them quit January and went home. And the next thing we know, we don't have any offensive linemen left. They're playing linebacker in a bowl game, against Colorado our senior year, because we didn't have any depth. I was a tight end, and I think one reason that Coach Bryant kind of let me stick around and be on the staff, he felt so sorry for me about putting me at 195 pounds in the offensive tackle. Dave Bunson, a guy that was a 25-year-old, I can't even remember his name, but a 25-year-old senior sophomore out of Colorado, played at Colorado. He was all Army, and he was 25 years old, and him and Dave Butts both of them played pro football later on, and was playing against them, and one of our tackles was having a problem with the other guy, and Coach Sharp called down and said, "Don't swing anymore. Don't go from left to right. Just stay on the left side all the time." And I looked over there, and there was Dave Butts, the biggest human being I ever seen in my life. And I said, "I don't know why Sharp did this to me, but he gave me a headache all that game." He was a great player, and we ran out of people, and a lot of people don't understand it. They think what happened was coaching, and they know it really wasn't. We had a lot of kids that quit. They wasn't used to that kind of environment that they were put into. And Coach Bryant had always recruited a quicker kid, and he worked the devil out of them. So it took you 2 years to rebuild it. They think whether he had went to the Wishbone or not, it might have been good enough without going to the Wishbone to win 100 games the next decade. I don't know, but they did, in the situation with Coach Royal coming in. He and Coach Bryant were great friends, and talked him into doing that. I remember in the staff meeting one time that Coach Bryant came in and said, "We're going to the Wishbone, and if you don't know how to coach it, I'll get you another job." And I walked down the room, Tennessee just started dying laughing. All those offensive coaches started, they said, "I don't know nothing about it right now, but how about give me a book and learn it real quick." I came out with the Wishbone story. My job as a graduate assistant was cutting the grass every afternoon on the tractor, which I liked that. But and then every afternoon at 3:00, then it wasn't mandatory workouts, but you'd have workouts. My job at the workouts was I was a defensive tackle standing there with a dummy, and he'd just walk out to the left or come down to the right. The quarterbacks were supposed to read that. That was their first read as a defensive tackle or 5 technique. Back then, we practiced that all summer before they really got into it good. And I know they kept it a secret against Southern California. And we were, back then, the graduate assistants, we all lived together at Northington, and everybody ate hamburgers together and they cook out. Nobody would go to the game and we all listened to it on the radio. I think they scored the first 3 times they touched the ball and didn't do nothing after that, I don't believe. But they were able to win the football game 17-14. And they talked about Southern Cal coming into the year before, changing the history of football in the South or how they treated Alabama. And I was in that game and watched it very closely from the sideline. And Coach Bryant said one time, he said, I don't care what you do, get in goal line defense and play it all over the field. We're going to stop. Back then, goal line defense, it was a penetration defense, and the defensive line get on real low and just try to submarine on the offensive people and back them up with the linebackers to make the play. What all Cunningham did was just step over everybody. We never did stop him, So Cunningham, he had that big tailback or fullback, whatever he was back then, and we never did stop him.
Danny, you talked a lot about Coach Bryant, but what was it like being a part of his program? And one of the biggest lessons that shaped your coaching philosophy?
Well, if I would have been a better student, I would have took a whole lot better notes. I would listen more. There was so many things he taught the coaches, to the players, how he handled the press, how he handled alumni, and a lot of things that I would have been a lot better football coach if I would have listened a little bit better in his meetings and took better notes. But everything that we tried to do, anytime we got in a situation, whether it was winning or losing or handling a player or whatever it was, it always went back to what he did, that's all I knew. It was a great experience. And all the other coaches, Pat Dye was the reason I got into coaching, and at the college level, I was going to take a high school coaching job, and he taught me and getting my master's degree. He's always been a very close friend until his passing. And I thought the world of him and his children. My wife and I babysat his children when they would take all the coaches to Montgomery and have alumni meetings down there.
Coach, you were talking about the transition while you were a player in your early years, even as a graduate assistant and as a coach. Can you talk about a little bit about how you saw the game evolve during your playing days and maybe those first couple of years as a graduate assistant and early as an assistant coach?
Well, even after you have Joe Namath, Steve Sloan, Kenny Stabler, we were throwing it. And then we get Scott Hunter, and he was on everything coming out of Pritchett. So we were nothing but a throwing football team. We wasn't winning throwing the football. The other team did. And we won 6-5. And next year, as a graduate assistant, we won 65. And it just we didn't have the personnel, or we didn't have, and that was part of it. Again, like I talked earlier about the freshman league, didn't have personnel. But we were throwing the football all over the field, and then how we played in the Archie Manning, Scott Hunter shootout in Birmingham, where the third last one gets the football's going to win, and they're 33-31, and something a heck of a ball game. And both quarterbacks played great. Then we went downhill a little bit, and I remember Scott Hunter was playing Vanderbilt, and it was the first time Vanderbilt had ever beat Alabama up in Nashville, and he got hit in the eye and missed several passes that could have been real big plays, but he couldn't see. I go back to that ball game. I played against a guy named Pat Toubé, who was a very good football player, played for Dallas for a long time defensive. Then it just kind of stuck to me that, man, you got one quarterback, if he gets hurt, you better not just depend on the quarterback to win football. That's when we started going to the Wishbone after that. And the option was one I was most impressed with because with the Wishbone, or you can do it out of an eye, too. You don't have to have 3 backs. and you probably can do it on a split back veer. But as long as you put your quarterback, see, in football, you can always account for 10 people. Can't account for the safety. You don't have anybody for him because the quarterback is, he's on the offensive side, and so he's not a threat all the time. But anyway, trying to make a point that when you were able to put the quarterback's eyes to block a defensive tackle, whether he went up the field or close for the fullback, you were able to always have an advantage over a 2-on-1 block, a 3-on-2 block, or a 4-on-3. So you still had to break it. If you're going to score, you had to beat the safety because worried about going quick at that guy back because he was 15 yards deep. Catch your first down and do it again. When a quarterback was able to do it, we were able to have an advantage on the offensive line by the quarterback reading the defensive lineman that we would have a blocking advantage up front. I like that part about the option. I like the part that you could pitch the ball and it's just like a swing pass. I've been out of it so long. Back when I was at Arkansas, I remember one of our coaches said, "This is the greatest play ever in football." And it was a stretch play. It was zone blocking up front. Football changed a lot to me. That it was a lot of stand up, getting it higher, not coming off the football with authority, in which we were always taught that with option, coming off the football and having that advantage of a 2-on-3, 2-on-1, or 3-on-2 or whatever. Everybody always had a double team. You expect to get movement, but then on the stretch play, they started getting up higher, and both the defense got higher and the offense got. Well, now you watch these kids, people play, and it's a lot of standing up. Real high. It was, but it's good. It's exciting ball and a great plays.
Coach, let me ask you a question. Because something I just wondered, I'd love to get you to talk about it a little bit. So, you talked about the option. Is the RPO we see today really kind of a grandchild of the old option? Is it just an evolution?
From what I understand, if the safety does this, you do that. And if it does this, they do that. We played Florida State with Virginia Tech. We were not very good. And the defensive tackles in the paper the next day, we won the football game. And we didn't win many at Virginia Tech, but we won that one. The defensive tackle said, "When I did this, they did that. When I did that, they did this." I said, well, that quarterback sure was good. Have Bruce Arians reading the offense. He was about a 5'2", 40 guy, snow as a Christmas.
We just had him on, Coach. So.
Yeah, we've had Bruce on. He was great.
He came out of Philadelphia, I think, as a throwing. That was kind of the time Coach Coffey was there. We were throwing football all over the field, and we came in and put the Wishbone in. We had two small quarterbacks. They cut the Greyhound bus. They couldn't get to the bus station time to catch the bus. So I think that's. But anyway, they were good guys and good players and made it through and helped us win. The way I understand the IPO deal is very similar. And I always thought back in the Wishbone days, and I may be incorrect, so somebody out there knows a lot more about the Wishbone than I do. When you played a 4-3 defense, you had a stand-up linebacker that was backed off the line of scrimmage. So, when you was reading the defensive tackle out of a 5 technique or odd man front defense with nose man and a tackle on your tackle, he was on the line of scrimmage. Back then, didn't believe you could read a stand-up guy off the line of scrimmage. You understand what I'm saying? So they moved it out one man further to the defensive end. I just liked the option. I really thought that was probably the best football play that I've ever been associated with, because you gave the guy the tailback the ball deep and he could cut where he wanted to. He had a chance to run with his eyes and see the field. With the Wishbone or the I formation option attack, you had the fullback, quarterback, or tailback running the ball. You had 3 options.
Well, Coach, what about teammates from your years at Alabama? Were there some guys that really stood out as either being significant leaders or influential guys in the locker room? Who do you remember, and who was important to you?
Tommy brought up one, but he, when I, yeah, God, he was just tremendous. That was Wayne Owen, Brian always called him Little Tiger. I got a tooth out because of him when I was a freshman running the ball. And kind of took one of my tooth when he hit me, but he was such a great player, and he's not a big man physically, but he was strong. And then you had Mike Hall, Bob Childs. I think I always thought that Tommy Somerville was a leader, and very very positive guy. We had some linebackers. I mean some offensive linemen above us. Where Cecil Dowdy was a tremendous football player. I remember Wayne Cook, tiny and very quiet but leader on the field. He had Staber, Hunter, Musso. Now I forget talking about the game at Ole Miss. I'll tell you this story, and I hope you don't mind stories, but we played in Ole Miss in the 32 or 33 or 31 game or whatever it was, and Ole Miss was like a 4-4 defense, and 3 techniques and linebackers stacked inside. We had a tackle trap, and I never will forget Coach Sharp, but I never have understood this terminology, and I never put that play in when I was coaching either. But it was a tackle trap, and Coach Sharp said, well, you pull, and if the 3 technique, which was a bad lineman over the guard and between guard and tackle, if he comes upfield, that means the linebacker's going to split inside, and you read on the run. That's what he called it, read on the run. And if he goes upfield, then you turn up and block the linebacker. If he comes down, you trap the 3 technique because the linebacker's running outside. So, which they called that there in trap play down there. And I was pulling and supposed to read on the run, trap one. Well, I missed both of them. I don't know if I hit probably blocked air, what they call it back then. And they hit Musso, and he came back to the hell with nose and bleeding, and his helmet was turned sideways. He said, give me the dirt. He didn't say dirty. Give me the dirt football, and y'all get the heck out of the way. He was bad. And then showed up. He scored. It's the next one. Well, I knew we were going to tackle trap. It's read on the run. I did that. I had a hard enough time blocking everybody.
Wayne lived up the street from us on Reynolds Circle in Gadsden. Wayne's little brother Phil and I, great friends. The thing about Wayne that was funny was he made, as you remember, Playboy All-American team. Mm-hmm. And that team was featured in one of the Playboy magazines. Yeah, and it was scandalous. I mean, we had a let's just say a hidden copy of it, hidden in the woods around Reynolds Circle.
Yeah,
I hope we just read the stories and saw the All-American team, but yeah. But Danny, I want to ask you something about what Sylvester Croom told about you recently. He spoke in Tuscaloosa, and he told us that when you were his shop teacher at Tuscaloosa High School, when you were doing your graduate teaching or student teaching, you took him under your wing, and he credits you with encouraging the UA coaching staff to sign him. What do you remember about that? Sylvester's done such a
He has done a lot. It's amazing because I can hardly remember even being any kind of him being in the classroom, much less really suggesting but his family, and he had the right kind to I thought he was going to tell a story about when came there as a tight end, and I ended up coaching him as an offensive center. I said, because that really made him mad because he thought he
told that
was
story.
Yes. But, I was not too long ago recall,
Right.
and a guy that played with him was Ralph Stokes.
Yeah.
And Ralph told a story to me, which I never knew. He said, I was on the verge of quitting at the university, and I came and talked to you, and you talked about it. I don't remember even doing that, but if it helped him and it's beneficial to him, I just did what I was supposed to do, and as a young coach and trying to take care of them off the field. I coach, I love them off the field, and don't ever let them leave mad off the field. You can get on them all you want to. Coach Bryant always had to say, and you can treat them any way you want as long as you win it. But if you're losing, you better treat them with kids who love. And I remember that saying. Sylvester was a great player. Beside being a head football coach, which was nearly impossible at Mississippi State,
Right.
and it's a tough job. People don't understand. Some jobs anybody can coach at and be successful. Some jobs, best in the world can't get it. And Mississippi State is a tough. Arkansas was a tough job. Just there's not enough players. Mississippi State, you got Ole Miss and you got Mississippi State. Back then, Southern Mississippi was good, or Mississippi Southern, whichever one they call them now. But so Sylvester went in there. I remember going down there to his coach's clinic and talking to him. And when Woody McCorvey, who was with me, was coaching down there, was his offensive coordinator down there, and they had a tough job. Rocky Felger was down there, and they had a good staff. I mean, a really, really good staff. One of the best offensive linemen I've ever seen dress out, besides John Hanlon, Alvin Samples. Big kid, big player. But it just didn't have enough. It was sort of like Clemson playing Alabama. They got one, and everybody else has got 22. Sylvester did a great job. His daddy was well respected in Tuscaloosa, and he was just like Wilbert Jackson. There could not have been a better person to be the first African American, Afro-American to play at the university. He was the salt of the earth. And I don't know if he grew up with a television or not, but all he wanted to do was watch TV in that lab. He had his chair, and he was always sitting in that place. I can remember, I lived in the dorm, too, as a graduate assistant, and been around all those guys, all the stories. And, Dexter Wood is a fantastic, great football coach at Buford High School. But, just the people you remember that been living in the dorm with them and stuff like that. But we and John Mitchell, John Mitchell, the story about Coach Bryant being out there playing golf with
John McKay.
McKay, he's a kid out of Alabama, out of Arizona Western. I'm fixing to sign it. They'd finished playing golf. I think Coach called back and said, I don't care what he is or who he is or what he plays. He said, you go down there, you sign that ball for us. It's California signs him, and they did. And when John came in, one of Coach Bryant's rules was no hair over the collar, no facial hair, no mustache, and nothing like it. He came in there, he didn't know. He had mustache and afro and everything else, coming in there. And then we were in the coaching meeting, and I was in the dorm living, still a graduate assistant. They got a look at him when he first came in and said, no, this ain't going to work, Well, they said, you go over there and tell him to shave. And I said, me? I said, yeah, I'm just a graduate assistant. So, this is a bigger job. I didn't want to see as big as he could be. And so, anyway, I knocked on his door, and I came in there, and he was about half scared to death. I was about half scared to death, too. And I said, Johnny Hines, and he said, yes, sir. I said, don't you call me, sir. And later on, when both of us went on the staff, he and I were roommates on the road. I got to know John really well. See him every once in a while. I know he's retired, but he had a great pro career. But those are the things I love about the University of Alabama. Even when we played Clemson and Alabama played, a lot of people ask me, well, who you pull for? Everything that I have accomplished or have done, I owe to the University of Alabama. That's my background. Everything that Clemson did for me to give me their good job at 30 years old, well, that was crazy. You know, I don't know if anybody they'll do that again to a 30-year-old. I look at my grandson now, and God, I was the head coach. My grandson, and he, you know, I don't want to say my grandson don't know everything, but he don't know everything, you know. And certainly, to goodness, I didn't know anything when I was given the job. But you learn quick when you get to, thank God I had the background I had. I mean, that's going back to Gaston, going back to high school. Gaston, Tommy knows her nickname of the town was the City of Champions. Anyway, going back to Sylvester, you know, salt of the earth, great guy. He came up here and spoke at Dabo's clinic probably 2 years ago. And Woody called and said, Sylvester's up here. Would you like to have dinner with him? I said, oh, I'd love to go back to the memories. He hadn't changed it.
For our viewers and listeners, Crimson Chronicles is proud to be a part of the Yay Alabama media family. Yay Alabama is the official NIL collective supporting Crimson Tide student athletes. As a member, you get access to exclusive Crimson Chronicles full episodes, premium events, and more. Visit yay-alabama.com to join today. Rick?
So, Coach, you talked about this earlier, but as far as Coach Bryant's approach, toughness, emphasis on discipline, how did that find its way into your coaching style as a head coach at Clemson and Arkansas?
He just gave you the feeling that, number one, you were going to outwork everybody. One of his first rules was, you know, when I played at Alabama in 66, when I went there, 67, 68, 69, Coach Bryant wasn't active like he was probably in 58, 61. I'd hate to have been there when he was, when them guys were, you know, because I believe he coached a lot different back than he did us. What I always remember, and I think, you know, well, I know so. If you played for him, most everybody played for him that coached for him. Very few exceptions. Okay. And either Kentucky, either A&M. Bobby Marks and I came in the same year as coach full time, and Bobby played at A&M for. And Coach Bailey and all them had been with him from the A&M years ago. But by the time Coach Sharp, Coach Williamson, Coach Tollison, Coach Sloan, all the people that had played for him, they knew exactly what he wanted. You know, he didn't have to coach hard. He was the CEO, but he would surprise you. He'd come in there, had a meeting with the coaches, and they'd say, well, why aren't we done this play? I mean, y'all put it up Monday, said it might be a good play against this team. And, you know, but he kept up with football, new football, but the crust of his people were people that played for him and knew what he wanted, knew what to expect. Not only when he was standing on the tower after every play, would you kind of glance up there as a player and make sure he wasn't coming down to talk to you if you did something bad. The coaches was doing that too, because they wanted to make sure that they did the right things too. You know, they would kind of glance up there, but he was just outwork you, out hit you, out hustle you, never give up. You know, and he may whip you for the first 10 plays, and you keep at it, keep hitting him, and you'll hold him and have him in your back pocket in the fourth quarter. That's when he believed, you know, and all that toughness and physical practices, he was directed by him or brought to us by the coaches that had played under him and been under him and knew exactly how he wanted things done on the football field. That carried over to us. And I think it's probably with Coach, I forget, I was listening to somebody, somebody told me the other day, when they had the Letterman's barbecue there at Clemson, I didn't go. I was farming, but they had all the Letterman back. And Coach Sweeney talked to him. I think he got like 30 guys, 30 ex-players on his staff, somewhere in the staff. So I think I don't know if he got that from Coach Stallings, but anything you do, what makes a coach is just his past experience to me, and what you know is what you learned, what you were taught while you were playing. There's no magic to coaching, I don't think. If you work hard, you get after it, treat them good, but you work them good, prepare for life, and they gonna respond to you. I've seen Coach Bryant coaching players that wasn't up to snuff. It's all about those players, but those players have got to be motivated. Those players have got to be worked, and they got to respect who's working them.
You talked about your love for the University of Alabama, everything Alabama contributed to who you are as a person and a coach. What was it like, though, being on the opposite sideline, facing an Alabama team, and especially the energy and pressure that comes with playing against the University of Alabama?
The first year we came down to Tuscaloosa, they beat the snot out of us. It wasn't fun.
That's in your tech.
No. This was when I was at Arkansas. We came to Tuscaloosa probably 93, 4 or something like that. I don't know what years they all run together now, 93. But anyway, they slobber knocked us to death, and I didn't feel. I just standing on the sideline, just looking over there. And of course, Coach Stallings was there. I guess, yeah, Coach Stallings was there then.
Yeah.
And as well as I do now. But anyway, it wasn't no fun. And I wanted to get back on that plane, get back to Arkansas if people would let me get back in, just as quick as I get out of Tuscaloosa. And I think we played them 5 years. And I think we were 2 and 3, I guess. But both times it was questionable. One time we had 12 people on the field.
Here we go.
I remember checking Coach Stallings, coming out and go shake his hand after the game. Man, I'm so excited. I don't know we got 12 people on the field. I didn't know it. And he said, "Did y'all have 12 people on the field?" I said, "I think we did." Yes. He just walked off. Well, I went into the dressing room after that to the press, and I said, "I think we got away with one," and somebody said, "Don't ever admit that." When I got back to Arkansas, don't ever tell. I know I'm not a big coach. Don't ever tell them something like that. But anyway, we did have, but God knows, you don't think I'm dumb enough to try to put 12 in there and get a penalty. We just made a stupid mistake, substitution. And somebody was in there that didn't supposed to be, but there was 12. It was just as loud as it could be. There was 12. And Alabama had a tough time figuring that out until it was over. I mean,
we had an extra tight end there, Coach. And while we're talking about that, now let me get it off my chest.
Here we go.
In 1995, J.J. Metters, trapped the ball in the end zone.
No, he caught it.
With 6 seconds to go for y'all to win 20-19, and that was in 95. That was Coach Stallings. It was Coach Dubose in 97 when you had 12 men on the field. Yeah, according to everything I remember.
No. Coach Stallings I remember him saying, "Did y'all have 12 men on the field?" Look it up and call me back after we get
Coach,
off.
I'm gonna go with you because it makes a better story if it's Coach Stallings.
I swear it didn't say anything. And it might have been And see, I was Mike Newbold's graduate assistant coach when he was at Alabama too as a player, you know. So I mean, all those guys go back a long time, but I really enjoyed seeing him too. I believe they beat us 3 times. One time was really, really good. One time they came to Fayetteville because I remember Miss Stallings coming in my office and talking to me, and very nice lady. And one time, you know, Alabama, they've always done everything first class. I mean, everything they did, and a lot of people that had never been to to Fayetteville. We had a very small airport, and if you drove 71, I believe it was, and there was a bad curve. It was a 2-lane road, and that said, "Warning: there's been 7 people killed here." And then come up by the airport, and it's next to a junkyard. It looks like we'd have a little bit better way to get to school than that. But thinking that, I thought I was in North Georgia when I first flew up there. But anyway, Alabama, a lot of teams, we played South Carolina one year. They stayed in Missouri and never came to the field, and they'd never been to Fayetteville before. So they didn't know they had to dress in the track team's locker room. You know, that was for the track football team. They didn't even never show up. We beat the devil out of them. And in Alabama, they didn't want to, stay somewhere else. So they're going to be big time, and they're going to fly into Fayetteville. And, well, the plane ran off to the drug front. Got stuck.
Yeah, I've landed in that airport. They built that new one now.
Oh, man, it's a whole lot different. The whole universe, I think probably Fayetteville all the way to Rogers, Arkansas is probably wall to wall with people now, just like Clemson is now, and just like probably Tuscaloosa. I hadn't been to Tuscaloosa back in a while, just maybe drove through it mostly on 20, staying outside of the university, but I bet it's grown like crazy down there.
Well, Coach, for the record, you were 2-3 against Alabama. Alabama won 43-3 in 1990.
That was the one. That's one I really remember.
We won 13-6 in Fayetteville in 94, which was a great team and a great team. And y'all won 20-19. Barry Lunny skipped that pass off the turf.
Well, he may have skipped, but he had his hand under it. I know that.
That's
not on top.
Yeah, and then in 96,
well, you called J.J. back, or Barry Lunny doing a hell of a job. He's the offensive coordinator at Illinois. I'm real proud of him. Go ahead.
We won 17-7 in 96, and then y'all won 17-16 in 97. So,
was that when we had too many people on the field?
That's what.
That's the rumor.
So that's the rumor. Ask Woody.
I asked Woody because I saw Coach Stallings down at Montgomery for the big fundraising deal they have with Jimmy Ray.
Right.
And he walked in, and I walked in. We sat down together and talked a little while. And he asked how old I was, and I told him. He told me. He said, I was just a child. I said, well, I don't feel like no child. And we talked a little bit about football. And I said, Coach, football ain't near as important as it used to be to me. He said, me either. I tell people that if I know how I feel now, as beat up as I am, arthritis as I got, I don't know if football's hurt more that worse all that pain you get when you get to be 80 years old or 77 years old or 78, whatever I am. But anyway, it was back then. It is a great game. It was a great school that I went to. I really got, I didn't apply myself as a student like I should have, but I was all academic FCC with reading.
Well, Coach, it doesn't sound like we're going to solve the mystery of whether the pass actually skipped or not, but one thing we do know, one thing we all agree on is today's episode is brought to you by Title Towel from Whitwell Sports. It's the ultimate Crimson Tide rally towel for game day. Head over to whitwellsports.com right now. Use the code TWO and get $1 off each of your Title Towels. Don't go to Bryant-Denny Stadium without it. Now, Coach, you're remembered for leading Clemson to the 1991 national.
What did that official call on that play?
You
Tommy?
talking about the skip?
Yeah,
He
Wow.
called a touchdown.
I don't believe he would have made it up.
No, I watched it last night. There's some evidence there that his hands might have been under the ball.
Well, you know, that's like, I'll tell you this story about Coach Bryant one more time, and then I don't know where you're going to go, but we'll go there.
I got you.
We were playing Virginia Tech, and Coach Coffey was there, and I knew Coach Coffey when he was recruiting at Tennessee. So after the ball game, I mean, we beat them 77-6 or 3 or something like that. But before the game, Coach Coffey said, he said, I don't know about this football team. He said, they just won't hit nobody. And Coach Bryant came back in and was sitting there. He talked to the team. He said, that coach told me that his team wouldn't hit nobody. And I said, I wonder what he's trying to do to me. He's trying to set me up. I mean, after the game, we won. He came in the dressing room and he said, what did they do good? Everybody kind of, not much. We just scored 7 points, beat them pretty good. The next day in the paper, he said that Virginia Tech had the best offensive game plan he's ever been against. And that's the way he would do things. He would brag on the people that he just beat the devil up, you know. So I guess Coach Stalin did that to me when they beat us 43-6. But I'm sorry,
Coach, what I was going to ask is, you know, I mean, everybody knows you're a national championship winning coach from Clemson University in 1981. What was it like in the years after in the college football playoffs when Alabama and Clemson were going head to head and playing each other every year? What was it like for you having, you know, maybe divided loyalties a little bit of both, you know, a love for Alabama, but a great heart for Clemson as well?
Yeah. Well, you know, I nearly got in a little bit of trouble because when they asked me that in the press, I said, I don't know who I'm for, to tell you the truth, because Alabama this and Clemson this. And one of my friends called and said, you got to say you're Clemson. I said, well, I'm telling you, I'm right in the crossroads here. Finally, it came to me that maybe the best team win, and I'm happy with that. If they're better than we are, and I say we because I coached here, and they better than we are, and, you know, I'm happy for them. I'm happy for Clemson. And it's been kind of like that, you know. It's been a two-way street where both teams have won. Maybe it wasn't expected, or I know one year we beat them pretty good, and it was a shock to everybody, and me included. You know, I didn't think they could. I didn't think they could beat Alabama like that. But it's just like this first opening weekend. I talked to a high school coach today from Louisiana, which is a retired coach, and a friend of mine helped us recruit back when I was at Clemson and Arkansas. And by helping, he helped us around the area and told us about kids and stuff like that's what I mean, just like he'd do anybody else.
Well, I know Tommy seems to have dropped off. I think he's having some internet trouble, but we're going to try to finish this thing up.
He's probably worried about Skip pass.
I was going to say he's probably on YouTube right now watching that pass, trying to see if he can prove you wrong. But
yeah.
Well, Coach, one more question for you. You know, looking back, how do you hope that Alabama fans and even the broader college football community remember you as a player and a coach?
Oh, Lord, that's a good question because I've never really sat down and thought about that. That's one reason, you know, when they said y'all would send me the questions, I didn't want that much time to study them because I got through with one question, you know. But anyway, I think just, you know, I thought I was a decent athlete going to as a player. I wasn't near as good as I thought I was, you know, coming from high school to but because of the coaching that we had, I mean, I think it made me a football player. Even when I was a senior in spring practice, my wife, I remember writing her a letter. I said, I think they're trying to run me off. I was, supposed to be the starting offensive tackle. I ended up being captain of the football team, and dang, they treated me bad that spring. I mean, I don't know, but I think they made me into a football player. So I give all of the credit to the coaches for that. And as far as a coach, I hope that I hope I'm remembered by our players, because that's the only thing important to me is what our players think of it. And when they grow older and get a bit, I had one call me just earlier tonight, and he's coming up for the first ball game. He was played on our 81 team. He's bringing his son, and I never met. He wants to meet me at tailgate, and I told him, yeah, we will.
Awesome.
Then he said, Coach, just tell my son while we're here. He said, was I a good player? And there, Jeff, I said, you were really a good player, but you was no fine. You were, and his son just started dying, and I said, you worked to be a good player, and you were a good player. That's what I care about.
Yeah.
And I just got too many kids that call me, old men now, call me and talk and just want to talk about the old days, how rough it was, how bad we treated them, and all this kind of thing. And but they all say, "Oh, I love you," and that's the most important thing to me, besides these kids and grandkids, how these players react after they've been through life, a little bit through life. None of them like you when they coach you. Tough on them. I've always believed that the tougher you are on them, the more they will respect you.
Well, you've got a long line of great men that you've coached over the years, and I think that's the legacy. Well, hey,
That's right.
folks, if you've enjoyed this conversation, go ahead and hit that subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. That's the best way to help us grow the Crimson Chronicles community, help us have great conversations like this one that we've had with Coach Danny Ford, and grow this community of Bama fans. So, Coach Ford, thanks for joining us. It's been an incredible privilege to have an opportunity to sit down with you tonight.